This is going to be our second video for chapter 25, the vertebrates. And remember last time, as I'm getting this pulled up here, we talked about some similar or common characteristics that all vertebrates have, or I should say all chordates have. Remember, vertebrate animals are in kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, okay? And to be in phylum Chordata, organisms or animals have four characteristics at some point in their life. And for most animals, it's going to be during embryological development. But those are things like a dorsal nerve cord, a notochord, pharyngeal slits, and a postanal tail. Okay, so those are the things that are common to all chordates. And we've talked about some of those chordates, the amphibians, the ray-finned fishes, the cartilaginous fish, in those as well. So today we're moving on into class Reptilia, or the reptiles. Remember, those names in parentheses is the class. So we're kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, and class Reptilia. Okay, so reptiles are going to include, as you probably already know, lizards, snakes, alligators, crocodiles, and then also birds. And reptiles are believed to have evolved from amphibians. There's some examples of reptiles. Most of them live on land, and to adapt to land, reptiles have evolved a tough, scaly skin that's going to help reduce water loss. Okay, so just like plants or any other animals or organisms that have evolved to or become adapted to live on land, they're going to need protection from drying out. Okay, humans are like 2/3 water or more. Okay, so that's just an example. We need to be protected from drying out. Now, obviously, we're not reptiles. We're going to have other adaptations that help us on land, but those are some for reptiles that help them prevent water loss and then also protect its body as it's moving around and rubbing up against things or brushing against things or evading other predators or competition from members of the same species for food or whatever. Those tough scales are going to help protect the body as well. Another important adaptation that reptiles have had to further allow them to live on land is internal fertilization. Okay, so the egg and the sperm meet inside of the body. Whereas if you remember the video from the amphibians from last time, the sperm and the eggs are released into the environment, and that is where fertilization takes place. Amphibians have external fertilization. And so internal fertilization eliminates the need for water for reproduction. Okay, another important adaptation or trait that reptiles have evolved is a shelled egg. And in that egg is what we call the amnion. It's an amniotic, oops, can't spell, egg. Okay, so this is a different egg type than what we saw with amphibians. It's an amniotic egg, and the shell on this egg, which amphibians also didn't have, prevents the embryo from drying out. Okay, and that's something that seeds did too. Remember with the angiosperms, that protects that embryo and helps it not to dry out. So being on land, organisms definitely need to have structures to help them not to dry out. So this amnion, this part of the egg, is basically like an internal membrane that encloses the embryo into a kind of a watery environment so that developing embryo doesn't dry out, and it gives it the nutrients and moisture that it needs. Also, another thing that reptiles have that is even more efficient than with amphibians is their lungs, or their respiratory system. Remember, amphibians use their skin to absorb gases so that it could enhance their respiratory system by breathing through the skin. Reptiles don't do that. They don't breathe through their skin. They breathe through and they use their lungs. Okay. Also, the reptile circulatory system, okay, the heart and the blood vessels, the cardiovascular system, includes a 3-chambered heart or a 4-chamber heart in birds. Okay, the other reptiles have 3-chambered hearts. That's going to segregate or separate oxygenated blood that has a lot of oxygen in it, versus deoxygenated blood that has removed its oxygen or had its oxygen removed. So just to kind of tie this into last semester when we talked about cellular respiration, remember the reason that we breathe in oxygen, the reason that aerobic organisms breathe in oxygen is to be what? You guys remember why we breathe oxygen? Okay, that's to get oxygen in to be the final electron acceptor in electron transport chain in cellular respiration. So our cell metabolism, in order for our cells to have energy, in order for an amphibian or a reptile or a bacterium that is aerobic, they need to have that oxygen so that cell can metabolize sugars, metabolize nutrients, and get energy in the form of ATP. Okay, so as the blood passes by a cell throughout the body, that oxygen leaves the blood and goes and is used up by that cell. Okay, so as blood circulates around, that oxygen is removed from the blood and it's given to the cell to then complete it, metabolism. So oxygen comes in on the blood, gets delivered to the body, and then that deoxygenated blood is going to return to the gills or to the lungs or to whatever organ it is that they're going to pick up oxygen from. Okay, now I have an assignment for you guys. So you can either stop the video now or you can wait till the end to watch this one. This one we could go either way because we're going to talk about mammal circulatory systems here in a while. But there's a circulatory systems video on D2L, just like the other day. You'll have a few questions to ask, and then you can put the answers into the Dropbox as an assignment. Okay, so at whatever point, if you won't forget, you can wait till the end. If you think you might forget or you want to learn about it now, go ahead and stop this video, go back over to D2L and find more about the circulatory systems. Okay, we're going to learn about 3 versus 4-chambered hearts. We're going to learn about a little bit the difference in amphibian hearts versus reptiles versus birds and mammals versus fish. So learn about that and then come on back. Okay, lizards. Here's some examples of reptiles. Lizards are small predators. And these guys are going to eat insects or other small invertebrate animals. Some lizards can be really big. Komodo dragons can be up to 200 pounds. And some lizards have very potent venom that can kill prey, like the Komodo dragon or the Gila monster. They can be venomous, and if they bite humans, they can be harmful to us as well. Snakes, you know, you're all familiar with those as well. They're very active carnivores. They're predators. And they have a lot of adaptations to help them get food because they don't have hands or tentacles or limbs of some sort to help get food to their mouth. So snakes are going to have, let's see, special sense organs that help them track down prey. They can sense smell. They can sense body they can sense smell. They can sense any small differences in body temperature. Okay, I believe this should say body temp. Okay, so they're kind of like heat seeking. They can kind of, based on the temperature that the prey or another organism's body is emitting, they can tell the difference between that and the surroundings, the environment. Okay. Venomous snakes can deliver venom through hollow teeth. They're kind of like hollow hypodermic needles that can inject their venom into the prey. Snakes also have special jaw joints that allows them to either unhinge or really stretch out their jaw so they can swallow prey that's larger than their head. Also, a snake's ribs can also be expanded really easily, so that as that digesting prey item, the food is passing through the body, the ribs can expand and increase the volume of that snake. Okay, so I have another video here that I would like you to watch. It's on rattlesnakes. And this is another one for an assignment. So this one I'd like you to stop here because it really kind of ties into the last two slides that we talked about. So stop here, it's just a couple of minutes. Jump over, watch the rattlesnake video on D2L. The link is found in the rattlesnake, or in the vertebrate 2 assignment. It should be located just right underneath this video here back in D2L. And go ahead and answer those questions as well, and then come back and we'll talk about turtles. I lied. Alligators. Alligators and turtles. Alligators and crocodiles have evolved to live on land, but they do also, as you know, live in and around water. Their adaptations for an aquatic lifestyle are going to be the fact that their eyes and their nostrils sit high up on the head so that they can remain submerged for long periods of time with only their eyes and their nostrils sticking out. I'm sure you've seen videos or pictures of just the tiniest bit of the head of the alligator or crocodile sticking out of the water, and the rest of the body is completely submerged, and they'll kind of lie in wait there waiting for prey item to come along. They also have strong jaws and conical teeth, or teeth shaped like cones, so that they can crush and ingest those prey animals that they are going to eat. And one thing that's really unique about the crocodilians, which would be the alligators and crocodiles, is they have really extensive parental care. They really take care of their offspring. They spend a lot of time and effort at caring for their offspring. Crocodiles and other crocodilians will bury their eggs and then, or put them in some sort of nest, and then the parents will guard the nest until they hatch, and then they can carry those young around in the mouth and move them to a safe location or a place where they can find food and things like that. So they do spend a lot of time taking care of their young, whereas most snakes and lizards, they lay their eggs and then that's about it. They don't guard the nest like a crocodile would and care for the offspring like the crocodilians. Now turtles. I bet you guys can fill in this blank, right? Turtles have a protective shell. And turtles, a lot of times we think of them as marine or aquatic organisms, but turtles can also live in the desert. There are desert turtles. We do have turtles here in Southeast Colorado. They're desert tortoises, or box tortoises, actually. But turtles are protected by their shell, and their shell is really kind of interesting. The shell is going to be attached to or fused to, so the shell is fused to the vertebrae, ribs, and the clavicle or the collarbone on the turtle. So the bones of the skeletal system of a turtle is actually fused to its shell. And you guys don't have this slide. I had an actual turtle shell in the lab that I was going to show you if we were meeting face to face. But you can see here's the inside of the shell. This would be like the sternum or the breastbone that sits on the underside of the turtle. And then you can see the vertebrae and the ribs. And so the turtle cannot lose its shell. It cannot be separated from it because it's basically an extension of its skeletal system. Turtles do not have teeth, but they use a beak instead. And this beak is used to eat a variety of foods. Some turtles are carnivorous, where they eat fish and amphibians, and others are herbivores, and some can also be scavengers. The largest turtle can grow up to 6 feet long, and it's called a leatherback turtle. And these turtles live in the sea or in the ocean, but they return back to land. They take huge migrations back to land to basically lay their eggs. So they do long distance migrations to go back to specific beaches to lay their eggs for reproduction. Okay, now I know we've talked a lot about how things have changed in taxonomy, how things have changed since I first learned about the different phyla of animals and so forth. And if you go back a long time, a couple of decades, birds were classified as their own class. Avia, I think it was. They were not in class Reptilia, and they've only recently, within the last 10 to 20 years, been actually put into the class with reptiles. So there are some similarities that birds have with reptiles, and then they have some similarities that they have that are closer to mammals, and we'll talk about those. But birds are a group of reptiles, and modern birds are distinguished from reptiles because of their feathers. And feathers are really just a highly specialized reptilian scale or reptilian scales. If you've ever seen a close-up of a bird and you look at their legs, you can see they have scales on their legs as well. But feathers are basically modified scales. Okay, now there's a lot of anatomy and physiology, which is how the body works, in birds that have been that is adapted for flight. Okay, they have some very unique modifications that help them fly. Okay, so birds are very, very light. So if an organism is going to fly, we don't want it to be big and dense and heavy and cumbersome. Birds are very lightweight, and so they have special adaptations that help with that. Their bones have extra air sacs in them, and their bones are very lightweight that help reduce the weight of the bird's skeleton. And then that helps them be able to fly. Also, so that's an anatomy change or adaptation. Here's a physiology change, okay? During non-breeding seasons, right? Most birds aren't going to lay their eggs in the wintertime. Most birds are seasonal breeders and lay eggs, summer, spring, early fall. Okay, so during those non-breeding times, the reproductive organs shrink and they get smaller, so that just helps the bird remain light. And also, most other species of vertebrate organisms, the female has 2 ovaries. Well, with birds, they only have 1 ovary, again, just to help really minimize their weight for flight. Also, feathers are lightweight, and they're going to be extensions of the wings and tails. So they can help with lift and control during flight. And then also feathers are helpful for protection and also insulation for that bird to help keep it warm or cool in the summer. Now, so the scales and some of the other modifications kind of relate to or are similar to what reptiles have. Birds also, they're kind of a crazy area there because they have body temperatures that they can maintain, and these are typically high body temperatures compared to the environment. So if you think of a snake, okay, a snake is what we call ectothermic. So ecto means from the outside or on the outside. So snakes, fish, amphibians, other reptiles get their body heat from the environment. Okay, so like today, I think it's supposed to get 70 some degrees and then down to 40s or upper 30s tonight. Okay, think about the rattlesnakes outside. Okay, they're going to go out today and lay in the sun and warm up and soak up all the sunshine to warm up their body temperatures. And then what are they going to do tonight when it gets down to 40? They're going to go hide under something warm. They're going to go in the ground. They're going to move and modify their behavior to keep their body temperature at a safe level. Okay, those are ectothermic, or sometimes called cold-blooded organisms, and their blood temperature, their body temperature is going to be a little bit lower than what we call warm-blooded or endothermic organisms like mammals and birds. So these hotter, warmer temperatures help bird and human mammal muscles and metabolic processes work at a most efficient peak. Okay, the animal doesn't have to expend energy and time and resources trying to find a place to warm up or cool off if it's too hot. And it basically helps those muscles, those enzymes, those metabolic processes run at a constant peak efficiency. Okay, you're not getting any spikes or dips in how efficient those enzymes and so forth are going to be used. And so we typically, like I mentioned, have a higher body temperature than our environment, unless it's like 110 outside. Endothermic animals have a high metabolic rate because we can use our enzymes very efficiently, which requires efficient oxygenation of our tissues, right? So if we're going to speed up our metabolism and have it really efficient, we got to make sure we're definitely getting oxygen there. Otherwise, metabolism can't happen from that aspect. Okay, so birds have circulatory and respiratory adaptations to help them be really efficient. And if you've seen the circulatory video, you've seen that already. Okay, as you saw in that video, the bird has a 4-chamber heart that prevents mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. You know, because if oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mix, it's just really inefficient because you're not getting the maximum amount of oxygenated blood going throughout the body when it mixes. Okay. Also with birds, the respiratory system has supplemental air sacs that provide the bird with oxygen even when it's exhaling. So that's just another way to get more oxygen in. Okay, and then our last class of chordates is going to be class Mammalia. And those are the mammals. And these are tetrapods, right? Four-legged animals or four-limbed animals. And one of their major adaptations is hair. And then mammals are going to be named for their milk producing glands used by females to feed their young. Okay, whoops. So some characteristics of mammals: mammary glands and hair. Mammals evolved before dinosaurs, but it wasn't really until the dinosaurs became extinct that mammals really went through what's called adaptive radiation, or they really took off in number and diversity of mammal species. Okay, so just like feathers, in mammals, hair is going to also help protect and insulate the body. Hairs are protective. If you think of your nose hairs, those nose hairs filter out and grab onto dirt and different particles that try to get up into your respiratory system. So that's just one way that hair can kind of protect. Birds, mammals, crocodiles, they're all going to have a very efficient four-chambered heart to get that oxygen really to the tissues to help with efficient metabolic processes. So there's three main types of mammals. Okay, there's monotremes, there's the placental mammals, that's one we typically think of when we think of mammals. And do you know what the other one is? You know, famous in Australia, the marsupials. M-A-R-S-U-P-I-A-L-S. So the monotremes, marsupials, and placental mammals are the three main types of organisms in class Mammalia. The monotremes are going to be egg layers. Okay, so they're going to lay eggs. The other mammals give birth to live young. And this is the only group that includes the platypus. Like Perry the Platypus. Do you ever watch that? Then there are some others as well, the spiny anteater and stuff. But monotremes are found primarily in New Guinea and Australia. Monotreme eggs have a leathery shell. They're incubated for 10 to 12 days by mom. And they're going to be incubated between mom's tail and her tummy. She's going to hang out there with them. And then once they hatch, they're going to be nourished on mom's milk. Now, monotremes do not have nipples like other mammals do. Their milk basically is secreted through the skin and then soaks the hair around them, and that's what the hair, they kind of feed off the milk-soaked hair. But that's how a baby platypus would obtain nutrients. In all mammals except monotremes, the embryo is going to develop in the uterus. Okay, so in monotremes, the baby still develops in the egg, but then in the platypus, the marsupials, and the placental mammals, that is going to develop inside of the female body in the uterus, which is the reproductive organ. The lining of the uterus is going to combine with membranes derived from the embryo to form the placenta. So like with a human, once fertilization takes place, that cell begins to divide through mitosis. And on about, oh, shoot, I can't remember, day 8, that embryo finally makes it to the uterus and implants. And it basically kind of burrows in and implants itself into the lining of the uterus. And then as that embryo is growing, part of the embryo is going to form the placenta, which is a fused portion between the uterus and the embryo. The placenta is going to allow gas, nutrient, and waste exchange between mom and baby. And one thing that's interesting, in humans, their blood does not mix. Okay, so it's not mom's blood circulating throughout baby. It is going to be mom's blood is here, baby's blood is here, and then nutrients and oxygen diffuse across a membrane and either go to baby or back to mom. So their blood does not mix. And the placenta is actually helpful to prevent most pathogens from crossing into and infect baby. So for example, if mom gets influenza while she's pregnant and she's sick, and as long as she keeps a healthy body temperature, she doesn't get too dehydrated, baby's going to be fine. Baby doesn't get influenza because influenza cannot cross the placenta and attack baby's respiratory system. But there are some things that can cross the placenta, like HIV and listeria. If mom is infected with those pathogens, then baby can be infected as well. But most things, there's very few things that actually can cross. So the placenta is very protective for the developing fetus. Okay, so the second group is marsupials. These are a little bit different than the placental mammals because the embryos develop in the uterus for a short time only. They do not completely develop inside of mom. Okay, so if you think of kangaroo, which is an example, or an opossum, those are some examples of, that is an example of a marsupial that we have here in the US. They're going to be born very immature. And then to continue developing, let's see. Where did it go? Well, like with a kangaroo or the wallaby, the baby is very closely attached to mom and is going to complete its maturation on the milk. Let's see. Kangaroos, okay, are often seen in, or basically are from Australia. A lot of the marsupials are from Australia. And then the marsupial in the US is the Virginia possum. That's the only one that, or one of the only that we have in the US or North America. The Tasmanian devil is a marsupial. It's kind of like a dog, sort of. Here's the picture of them. It's like a small dog. And it is a marsupial that is close to extinction. It was overhunted, and in the 40s it became protected by law, but now there is a cancer that really affects the Tasmanian devil population, so they're under threat of extinction. Okay, placental mammals, they have a placenta. I've already kind of described that. They have their young in the uterus a lot longer and a lot more developed at birth than the other type of the marsupials. And here's some examples of placental mammals. I'm sure you're all very familiar with those. But the largest groups, the largest number of different species of mammals, placental mammals, is going to be rodents and bats. Rodents make up 40% of all mammal species. So mice, guinea pigs, squirrels, chipmunks, beavers, porcupines, all of those things are rodents. And there's a lot of species of rodents. And so it's, again, 40% of all the known mammal species. There's one that weighs 110 pounds. That's a huge rodent. It's called a capybara. This guy here lives in South America. And then another 20% of all mammal species are bats. So between the rodents and the bats, those are going to be 60%, if you add those together, of all mammal species are rodents or bats. Bats can fly. They're the only mammals that can fly. Bats are nocturnal, as you know, roosting in dark areas. And I have, well, hold on, hold that thought. Bats can feed in different ways. Some bats eat fruit, they're fruit bats. Some bats eat nectar from flowers that bloom at night, but most bats are going to be predators. Okay, so a lot of times they'll eat insects. Mosquitoes is one that there's certain types of bats eat tons and tons of mosquitoes every night that are really good for humans to get rid of those mosquitoes. Most predator bats, especially those that catch insects and things like that, use echolocation. Using sound waves to detect where their prey is and use that to identify a prey item and its location. Let's see. Other primates include, or I'm sorry, other mammals include primates, which are going to be like the humans, apes, monkeys, those types of things. Cats, wolves, whales, those are all some examples. We just talked about bats, and bats carry a lot of different diseases, as do rodents. But bats can carry things like rabies, and also it's believed that this COVID-19 virus became to infect humans through bats, contact with bats. So just because it's a relevant topic right now with right where we are in the world today, I'm going to have you guys watch one last video for this lecture portion. And that is the bats and COVID-19 video. Okay, so there's some questions that you'll answer on that as well. And it's just a news report that might give us a little more insight in how bats and humans interact in certain areas of the world. Okay, so watch that video. You'll have 3 videos for the lecture portion: the snake, the bat, and oh my gosh, what was the other one? The circulatory system. Okay, then also, you will have a perch dissection video to watch. That's in the lab videos there, so make sure you do that today as well. Remember, these assignments here, the videos and the lab video and questionnaire, are due today, okay, April 2nd. If you have any questions, let me know. All those assignments need to be uploaded into Dropbox by 11:59 on April 2nd. And then also you'll have 25A homework due on Friday in mastering and 25B homework due Sunday night in mastering. So if you ever get confused, just check the checklist on D2L. Okay, I also wanted to mention about the research paper. I have pushed the deadlines back. Okay, so check up on those. I know getting seeds to germinate and planarians to regenerate and all that stuff, it might be kind of pushing it. So I pushed the deadlines back for that. So make sure you check that out. And also, please, 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 before you submit anything, whether it's a rough draft to your paper, which is optional but highly recommended, or if you submit anything else, make sure you check out those resources on D2L. It's going to give you specific information on how the papers are going to be graded. There's an example paper. There's a resource on how to write a good hypothesis. There's a resource on how to write with scientific writing. And then the research project criteria 1 worksheet, or not worksheet, but handout, tells you exactly what I'm going to be grading on and what I'm going to be looking for as I grade your papers. Okay, so as always, please reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions, but definitely make sure you're looking at those resources. Okay, have a great weekend, stay healthy, and we will catch up with you later.